This is a talk. This is a talk about one word. Whole talk, 45 minutes, one word. I'll say the word a lot. I gave the talk in a community group in Newcastle a couple of months ago, and apparently I said it 115 times. It's a word that you'll have heard loads of times yesterday. You might have heard the word as many times as you've heard Kanban, possibly more times than you heard lean, maybe even more times than you heard agile. But I want to talk about this because the thinking around this has had a kind of profound effect on me and the way I see the world and the way I think about things. And when I do normally talk about it with groups, there's not a shared understanding of what the word means or the context in which it's being discussed. When I say system, the word, people often think, or talk to developers about system, they think about the system in which they're working on. I mentioned it to a colleague the other day, and he says, oh, you're going to talk about the decision-making mechanisms in your brain? I'm like, no, it's not that. It's about necessarily organizational systems. Yeah? So who am I? Who am I? That's who I am. Oh, come on.
So this is Chris. He has this really cool conference in Scotland called Edinburgh. We'll still call for papers. It will be in October.
Thank you, Gita. There we go. Yay! Yes, what Gita said. So tell me, who had too much to drink last night? Yeah. Did anyone wake up with a headache? No? Yeah. Okay, so when you have a headache, how do you normally go about treating it?
Stay in bed.
In bed. Aspirin, painkillers, right? You don't necessarily seek a brain surgeon to go and, attack the point of pain and go in and fix it for you. No, and when you take the paracetamol, you consume it. You take it, into your stomach. Yeah, you don't try and shove it in your ear or up your nose and get it as close to the point of pain. No, we have this innate understanding that our body's a system. Yeah, it's a series of interconnected parts. Our digestive system and our nervous system all work together to try and kind of help relieve the pain. But that's not normally how we think about things. What we normally do is we try and break things down. There's this psychological phenomenon called chunking. And this is the idea that when we perform a memory task, we categorize things. We break them into groups in order to best perform that task. So I want you all to do something for me. I want you all to visualize in your heads your mobile phone numbers. Have we done that? Did anyone, hands up if you visualize your mobile phone number as a continuous series of 11 digits? Anyone? Yeah? Who visualized it as chunks, as groups? Yeah, of course. So I tend to think of it as 5 numbers, 3 numbers, and 3 numbers. Yeah, that's how I break it down. So this kind of phenomenon, the way we think, has led to potentially some philosophical theory around this. So we have this idea of mechanism. This was a philosophical theory developed by René Descartes. And mechanism his theory said that human beings were no more than complicated machines. They were just complicated parts with no intrinsic understanding of the relationship. There was no focus on the relationship of the parts. We fast forward a few years and we take this thinking towards how we go about designing the work and the way we work. We have Adam Smith, and his paper on the wealth of nations introduced the concept of division of labour. Adam Smith believed that this would give a quantitative increase in the productivity during the Industrial Revolution. So we've broken the work down into parts. We've broken it down to specialisms so people can perform particular duties in the job of doing work. Then we have Fredrick Winslow Taylor, who's taken it a wee bit further, and what he's done is he's taken those parts of work and standardised them, turned them into recipes, into a series of steps that you follow in order to do that work. So again, we're breaking it down and making it simpler. And we have Alfred Sloan, who scaled this up slightly. Alfred Sloan's the CEO was the CEO of General Motors. And he introduced this concept, which he called decentralised operations with coordinated control, which we know of as silos, organisational silos. So we have the concept of an organisation, and that we were trying to, it has a function or a purpose, and that in order to meet that purpose, we've broken it down into departments. We'll have finance, HR, yeah, or sales, marketing, product development, manufacturing, and then we come to IT. We've broken it down further still into analysis, development, test. Yeah, we're trying to reduce it to the constituent parts, easy for me to say. However, Karl Marx believed that the worker would become depressed spiritually and physically to the condition of a machine through the concept of division of labour. Yeah, and if you look at the studies over the last few years about employee engagement in work, we see that employees, 31% of employees are engaged in the work they do. Yeah, that's 69% of the people who go to work are disengaged from the day-to-day job, the large part of their life. So, what I guess I'm suggesting is we want to change that thinking. We want to change the thinking from looking at our organisations as a collection of assets, chunks of parts, resources, and start to think about the connections, the social systems in which we work. Okay? So, to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this concept of systems, I'm going to take a reductionist approach to it, and we'll talk about all of the constituent parts that go together to make up this idea of systems. So first off, what is a system? Donella Meadows says, a system is an interconnected set of elements which is coherently organised in a way that achieves something. Acuff makes it simpler still, it's parts which interact to meet a purpose. Okay, you think about a human system. Yeah, a human system is a series of parts, interconnected parts, which achieve the purpose of life, giving us life. Yeah? One of the key considerations which takes this concept of systems thinking away from this reductionist breakdown thinking is that the concept of interaction and interdependence in systems. Alessia Wararo suggests that the meaning exists in the interaction. That is the important part of a system. That's our change in thinking, away from thinking of these constituent elements to how they interact. Yeah, Ross Lakoff would say, in order for a system to have effect, or a part to have an effect within a system, it's dependent on other parts. Our parts are interdependent. Our parts are interdependent in systems. So if you think about it, I want to give an example here. I want to pick up my clicker. Yeah, what part of my body is going to pick up my clicker? Anyone? Yeah. My hand. Yeah, but I can't even do this silly movement without the dependence on my wrist, my elbow, my shoulder, my feet, my hands, my legs, my cardiovascular system. Yeah, fully interdependent. Acuff would say defining properties of a system are properties of a system which none of the parts have. Okay, so I mentioned this a second ago. The defining properties of a human system is it has life. None of our parts have life. We have life. Anyone want to tell me what the defining properties of a car are? It transports you from A to B. It's not the engine, it's not the wheels, it's not the steering wheel. It's the fact that it transports you from A to B. In fact, we have to, well, not so much now. I think Tesla and Google are going to take us out of this, but for most of us, we have to be part of that system in order for it to transport us from A to B. Another important concept in systems is this concept of feedback. Does anyone know where the term feedback originated? It wasn't Clapton or Hendricks or any of these guys. It came slightly before them. It came from the broadcast industry in the 1920s. Yeah, this feedback, as we understand it, this noise, yeah, you get when the microphone and the speaker get too close together. That word kind of came into understanding in the 20s. It only became the word that we understand now in the 40s, where we have interactions and there's information flow between. Yeah, so the 1940s, that's like less than 100 years ago, that concept came to being. So if we then, there's different kinds of feedback in systems. We have two main kinds. We have balancing and reinforcing feedback. So this system here is a system population. Births reinforce that stock of population, and deaths balance that. Okay, so this is a way of drawing systems called stocks and flows. We have our stock, which is our population there. We have flows, which are the interactions, and then we have these clouds, which draw the boundaries around our system. I'll come back to boundaries in a minute. Systems have resilience. Yeah, Resilience is something that's born by a system having slack or space within it, or a series of options within the system. Yeah, if you think about resilience in human systems, yeah, we're resilient to change in temperature, loss of limbs, certain limbs. Yeah, there's one, you know, if we kind of lose our head, then that's it over. That system is kind of broken. If you think about spaghetti, dry spaghetti is not very resilient. Yeah, it'll break up. You can easily destroy that system. But if you cook it, it becomes much more malleable, resilient to any kind of form of change. If you think about organizations, Toyota became popular, or we started to take notice of Toyota in the 70s when there was a fuel shortage and lots of the car manufacturing industry started to slow down. Toyota continued to grow through that because they were resilient. They could cope with that impact from the outside, yeah, that perturbation, that impact on the system. Whereas you look at an organization like Lehman Brothers, not so resilient. Yeah, they had very few options. Yeah, they couldn't cope with any impact from the outside. When the credit markets were disrupted, yeah, then that system crumbled. They couldn't cope. Yeah, and the wider financial system then noticed this and started to support the other organizations who were seeing trouble. Self-organization is another core concept within systems. If you think about the idea of community groups, yeah, community groups who organise around a particular purpose, like an oil refinery being built down the road. Yeah, they have a community group that will get together and go and protest against this. There isn't someone who goes around and manage this, who will go and get everyone, chap on every door and say, you must all come at this time to this thing. No, they all self-organise around this. If you think of Gandhi and the Salt March, Gandhi went off with the purpose of highlighting this, how the British Empire were sort of treating the Indian colony, and he set off on a march, and then others joined. Nobody went round and gathered everybody up. They all kind of just joined in and followed Gandhi. Time also plays a key role in systems and when we understand systems and the behaviour of systems. If you think about a shower, you're in a hotel for the first time, you're using the shower, and you turn the shower on and it's not the right temperature, so you change the dial and nothing happens, and you change it again, and then you get this compound impact of change and you scold yourself, and then you then turn it right down to it's too cold until you empirically adjust, because the flow of water through the system in the first instance has taken a long time for it to heat up, but now the system is prepared to cope with this change and will react much quicker. Toby has a fabulous post called Hysterious Management. This is a concept of management making change on a system and not waiting for that change to take effect, the system to stabilise, before making yet another change. And it becomes a very uncertain system and an unstable system. In order to understand systems, you have to draw boundaries around them. And these boundaries are not concrete, they're more membranes. Yeah, they're soft, but in order to be able to improve a system, you have to know where it starts and ends. Yeah? Think about, but this is not an easy thing to define. You think about a manufacturing system, and I'll give you the end of it, right? A car manufacturing system, the end of this system, as I'm deciding right now, is when the car rolls off the end of the line. We could probably argue this, but let's just say it's when the car rolls off the end of the line. Where does it start? Anyone want to hazard a guess at where it might start? The door of the manufacturing plant.
Foundry.
The foundry. Any more? Mining the ore. No lean person said customer demand yet, no. What about hiring of staff to man the factory, to work the factory? Yeah? So to understand that system, we have to draw a boundary. We have to improve it, to make it better, we have to know what the edges are. Okay. Acuff would say the systems approach to problem focuses on the systems as a whole, not just the constituent parts. This is another key sort of mental model when thinking about systems. Think about them holistically, the whole system when we're improving, and not just the parts. Elia Godrat, the author of The Goal, would say a system of local optima is not an optimal system. Yeah, if you make all of the bits super optimal, they don't think about the interactions, they don't think about how they work together. You have to think about the whole when you're optimizing improving systems. So let's think about different kinds of systems and categorizations of systems. We have ordered systems. Now, ordered systems are systems which have linear causality. That is, you can line up a series of steps and I get a particular outcome, and then repeat the steps and get the same outcome. Yeah, there's a degree of certainty there. You go through this process, like say a manufacturing process. You go through a manufacturing process and you know what you're getting at the end. Okay? This is why Taylor is suggested here as one of the most influential people of the 20th century. The problems he was working on were simple problems, yeah, that the ordered systems could manage and could work well with and improve. However, we also have this concept of unordered systems. Now, the key element, a key thinking part of when you think about unordered systems is this concept of emergence. Okay, so when we have parts in a system and when they interact, something new emerges from that. Yeah? Now, when that novelty, that new thing emerges from that interaction and changes the behavior of the parts, that then becomes a complex adaptive system. And complex adaptive systems are inherently uncertain. Yeah? We can't line up all of the parts and go through a series of steps and expect the same outcome. Something might change as these parts interact. Okay? However, complex adaptive systems are dispositional. They are likely to end in a particular way. They're disposed to a particular outcome. Okay, in order to manage a system like that, you apply constraints to it. You put boundaries around to manage it and to get to a favourable outcome. Let me give you an example, and it's a similar example to Patrick used yesterday. Football is a great example of a complex adaptive system. But let's first remove all of the constraints from football, all of them. What would football be like with no constraints? No lines, no constraint in the number of players, no constraint in the number of balls, who can touch with their hand, the rules. It could be kind of violent, right? Yeah, it's be disposed to a particular outcome, but it wouldn't be a kind of favourable outcome, wouldn't imagine. So what we do is we apply constraints. Yeah, we apply constraints like lines, the number of players, the number of balls, who can touch it where, who can stand where, offside rules, etc. Yeah, so we'll apply these constraints in order to get a kind of favourable outcome. However, it's still a complex system. And within those boundaries, there's still complex interactions. There's still change will happen. So as a player passes the ball to another player, depending on where someone else moves, they may move to the right, they may move to the left. You don't necessarily know how it's going to evolve. Okay? So I need 6 volunteers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 6. How did that happen? Quickly stand up. I'm going to ask you to form a little exercise to kind of show the difference in types of systems. So if you come into this space, I have 20 minutes, good. I want to identify 2 others within the group. Don't look at them and go, you, don't tell me, but just identify 2 others within the group that are standing next to you. And I want you to stand equidistant from them. So if you stand 1 metre from one, stand 1 metre from the other. If you stand 2 metres from one, stand 2 metres from the other. Okay? Go. Careful. So this is a complex system. What's happening is, as movement happens within the system, you don't necessarily know what effect you have downstream. I need you for one more thing, sorry. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen to those who are interacting with you. So the system constantly evolves. It will have order. It This system should come to a level of order called emergent order. Yeah, it's not directed order. I'm not going to tell them how to order that system. It will emerge and stabilize. Yeah. So now I want to show, that was an unordered system. Let's show an ordered system. Could you all line up and face me? Line up there and stand 1 arm's length apart. Yeah, it's enough room? Just about.
Yeah, fine.
Right, okay.
All right.
So, could you take 1 step forward? And everyone stay one arm's length apart. Yeah, so, yeah. Ordered, right? You kind of know what's going to happen there. Yeah, you kind of know how that's going to, what the outcome is going to be. Thank you very much. So let me give you some examples of systems and the effects of not thinking systemically, holistically. So in the 1950s, there was the Dayak tribe in Borneo. They were dying from malaria. So someone picked up the phone to the World Health Organization and said, we're dying here, it's malaria, can you help us out? And they said, well, malaria, that's mosquitoes that cause that. What we'll do is we'll spray DDT everywhere. So they sprayed DDT everywhere, and it killed the mosquitoes. Yay, people are not dying from malaria, that's good. But the DDT also killed other predatory insects. And these predatory insects used to eat caterpillars who sat in the roofs of the houses. And without the caterpillars getting eaten, the roofs of the houses started falling on people's heads. That's better than dying, yeah. But what also happened is the geckos would eat the insects that had been killed by the DDT. And geckos were resilient, right? They could cope with a level of DDT in the system. Then cats would come and eat the geckos, and cats they weren't resilient to DDT, so the cats would die. And then there was a growth in the number of rats, and people started dying of typhus. So they picked up the phone to the World Health Organization and said, help us here, we're all dying of typhus. And they said, typhus, rats, what you need is cats. And they parachuted in cats to kill the rats. What idiot thought of that? What idiot couldn't see this outcome? Yeah? This is another cognitive bias we have, another psychological phenomenon, which suggests that when we see the outcome of a particular action, we're likely to attribute that blame or attribute the error to just the outcome. We just see the outcome. We don't understand the conditions in which someone makes that decision. We don't understand why they've done the thing they have done. We don't understand the full context. So an example of this is you're driving along the motorway and someone cuts you up, and your first reaction isn't, I bet you're all thinking this, idiot. What idiot? Why would you do that? Yeah? But we don't understand why they did that. We might not realize that they were under pressure. They might not have certain things that are happening in the car. They need to take off at an exit because they're rushing to a hospital. We don't understand the context in which they're acting. Yeah? But we'll attribute blame. However, Edwards Deming, he would suggest when we're looking at the performance of an organization, the variation in that performance is attributable to the system and not to the individuals operating in that system. Example of that is in the early 80s, there was a General Motors plant in Fremont, California. This was the worst manufacturing plant in the General Motors sort of suite of plants. The quality of the cars that came off the line were atrocious. One of the things you expect to do is once you've built a car and it gets to the end of the manufacturing line is you drive it off. No, often you had to push them off. Yeah, often cars didn't have steering wheels. You look at the back and say, that's a Chevy or whatever. And you look at the front and you say, no, it's an Oldsmobile. It's something different, yeah? The parts are just stuck on. No, there's no real care. On the line, workers drank, took drugs. Some days, so few of them turned up that the manufacturing line couldn't start. Yeah, it was a terrible plant. There was a lot of tension between the management and the workers, as you can imagine. So General Motors decided enough was enough, and they closed Fremont plant in around about 82, 83. At this time, this kind of coincided with two pieces of legislation going through the American legislative process. One was the desire to reduce car emissions, And the other was a desire to raise import tax because American manufacturing was getting beaten by the Japanese, who were producing far higher quality products. So they wanted to try and save American manufacturing by raising the tax on the incoming goods. So this posed two companies' problem. The first company who had a problem here was General Motors. They didn't know how to produce a good small car. They'd never managed it. They could produce big cars, but not good small cars. And it gave Toyota a problem. Toyota, America was one of Toyota's largest markets. And if it wouldn't be able to sell cars there, this was going to affect their revenue. So Toyota wanted to carry out an experiment. They wanted to see if they could operate in America. So they got together with General Motors and they said, we will build you a small car. We will show you this thing called the Toyota production system, the way in which we work, and which gives us these high quality cars. If we kind of collaborate on this, and they created this organization called the New United Motor Manufacturing Incorporated, which is NUMMI. And when they went about sort of how do we resource NUMMI, GM said we've got Fremont plants available. We could go and use that. That's good. And then one of the first hires they brought in to GM was a guy called Bruce Lee, and he said, I want to be responsible for the hiring of the staff to work the line. And Roger Smith there, the CEO of General Motors, said, no chance. That's not going to happen because you'll hire all those idiots that you had before. And Eiji Toyoda said, go ahead, just hire who you think you can do the job. Turns out 85% of the workforce who had been in Fremont worked in NUMMI. Yeah? And within 3 months of NUMMI opening up, they were producing Toyota quality cars. They were producing some of the best quality cars in America. The same people, the same space, and working in an entirely different system. There's two fundamental differences in the system. One of the core differences was this concept of stop the line. It's called the and-on cord. They said if a worker found a defect in a car, they'd pull the cord, it'd stop the line, they'd go and fix the defect at root. They'd go and understand what it was, and they'd go and fix that problem. Workers had never been trusted to do this in GM. What happens if they feared if they pulled the cord, they would open another can of beer. Yeah? So the other thing that happened was that the workers were asked, how do you think we can solve the problem? They were asked themselves. They had this belief that the workers who were closer to the work understood it better, so they were asked to improve. And General Motors workers had never been asked this. It had always been top-down, outside-in improvement. So a systemic change had a profound effect in the way in which that organisation performed. So what about software development? Is this applicable to software development? Let's do a fundamental attribution error test. Hands up if you've ever heard this when a defect is found in a production system. Have you ever heard who tested it? Yeah? Or who developed it? What idiot did that? Yeah? I believe this is partly responsible for that kind of thinking. This is, to me, is archetypal reductionist thinking. What we've done here, we all know what this is, yeah? It's a waterfall model. What we've done here is we've broken work down into parts. Yeah, and we've focused on the parts and not necessarily the interactions. I'm being slightly unfair. A later depiction of the model actually has loops going backwards as well. However, they only go one step back. There's only interaction here. There's not full cycle loops. Yeah? It doesn't appreciate the impact of time. Yeah? So we don't necessarily try and get the smallest thing through this system quickly to get feedback on it. No. It works on the premise of certainty. It works on the premise of what we have is complete understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve, and we can just, as we go through this process, we'll be able to work everything out as we go along. It's not resilient when new information emerges. Yeah, we have change requests. Yeah, we don't want this change to impact the way we work. What waterfall does is it's an ordered systems approach to working in an unordered system. Yeah? It believes that we can have a high degree of certainty in what we're doing. It doesn't embrace uncertainty. Agile, on the other hand, embraces uncertainty. The core premise is that we can't know everything in advance, and what we do know might change. What we do in Agile is Agile is kind of like I guess David Anderson was talking about this last year in one of his keynotes. It's like a sociological revolution. What we're doing is we're looking at the social systems and the way in which we interact. Yeah, we're changing those processes and the way we work together so that when new information emerges, we can act on that, we can learn from that and change the way we work. However, sometimes Agile can be suboptimal. Yeah, we had a Scrum fall. Yeah, looking locally at small parts of a system, looking at just the development part. Yeah, and getting that super efficient and not thinking about the system as a whole. And it's often not, I guess, introduced in an Agile way. It doesn't. We don't often appreciate the uncertainty in which we're introducing Agile, not just the uncertainty in the product we're working on, but the uncertainty of the environment and the system in which we're going to work. So what does Kanban have to say about that, about systems then? So I took this from David's blog. This is 2010, so it may have changed slightly, but I quite like it because he mentions the word a few times. So Kanban is an approach to incremental and evolutionary change for technology and development operations organisations. It uses a work in progress limited pool system, here we go, as the core mechanism to expose the system, operational processes, the problems of that, and stimulates collaboration to improve the system. Yeah? So let's look what elements of Kanban have a kind of systems thinking background to them. So Kanban's appreciates what we're doing is we're working in an emergent environment where it's uncertain and where things change. So it says what we need to do is we need to create a situational awareness. We need to understand now. Yeah, and we need to evolve slowly as these new learnings emerge. So we start with where we are now. We pursue incremental improvement, and we collaborate and evolve experimentally. We carry out safe-to-fail experiments in this complex system. Kanban's thoughts on interactions. Jay Bloom, he suggests that Kanban provides a linear view of your social network. It shows us where the interactions happen. Yeah? Well, a slightly more subtle example. This is an example I always use when people ask me, should I use a digital or physical Kanban system? I worked with a team a number of years ago and we were using a digital system, and we found it wasn't sufficient, didn't meet our needs. So we moved to a physical board, and the very first movement of a card with it, word of a lie, introduced two interactions. Someone moved to the board, to the team space, moved the card, turned around, went back to their desk and had two conversations before they sat down because people had observed that change. And it encouraged, Kanban encouraged those interactions. Kanban's view on self-organisation, well, it's a pull system. Yeah, we pull work when ready. Yeah, there's choice there. It encourages active leadership at every level, from individual contributors, senior management. It's not just about directed managed change, but it encourages everyone to get involved and observe the problems in the system and look to improve the system. Kanban on feedback. Well, visualization gives us great feedback. Yeah, we get feedback on, as I was saying earlier, that movement in work. We see the state of work. But also, Kanban has a series of feedback mechanisms, feedback loops through just daily stand-up meeting. We get feedback on progress, and we get feedback on how people are working, any challenges people have. We have replenishment, so we have feedback on how well a particular increment of work has gone and how we can then bring more work into the system. Risk review, service delivery, there's a whole series of feedback loops that are designed to get us information at the relevant points in order to improve and continue working. Kanban's view on time. Well, we appreciate that knowledge work is perishable. That being, either we learn more, so it will change, or that if we don't deliver a particular piece of work at a particular time, then it no longer has value. Yeah? So we want to establish flow and get work done as quickly as possible in order to get that feedback. Kanban's view on resilience. Well, we defer commitment. We don't want to commit to everything. What we want to do is create options. Yeah, so we're not sort of jumping in on things. We want to say, let's wait to the latest possible point and then we can commit, so we still have these options available to us. And at its core, what we do is we create slack within the system in order to make it more flexible, allow more movement in the system, and allow us to find opportunities to improve and deal with the variation in work. Kanban's view on the whole, not the HOLE, the W. It asks us 3 questions. Who asks us when we implement Kanban? It asks us 3 questions. Who asks us to do the work? What are they asking for from us? So we look at the boundaries of our system. We start to look at that. We then do, what do we do with the work? What do we do with these requests for work when we get them? So we start looking at the interactions, the feedback loops, etc. And then where does the work go when it's done? So we're looking at the boundaries of our system. Kanban does this through a series of constraints. It allows us to manage the system through a series of constraints. So the first and most obvious constraint is the concept of limiting work in progress. Yes, this enables us to establish flow. It enables us to stabilize our system. Yeah? Part of what this allows us to do is take what can be a quite complex system and move it towards being a more ordered system. Yeah? So we have a more steady and reliable flow of work. We have explicit policies. We understand our policies. So we have a better understanding of how work flows through our system, and also we can have better interactions. We don't have emotional and anecdotal discussions about how the work works. What we have is our explicit understanding of how the work works through our policies. So we can have more informed discussions with each other when we look to improve. And there's a series of cadences. There's rhythms from our stand-up through our various feedback mechanisms that allows us to take stock at certain points and observe and get that kind of feedback. So, to sum up, when we're thinking in systems, if we think about one thing, if we take one thing away from this, think about interactions. A systems thinking approach emphasizes interactions over parts. Yeah, so it's our analytical view of the world is about breaking things down and understanding the parts. Systems view has changes that emphasis to how the parts of systems interact. Think about the interdependence of those parts, think about feedback, think about the effect of time on the systems, think about systems holistically. If you take a second thing away from this, think about systems as a whole and not about those individual parts again. Think about resilience, and then think about emergence and how when parts interact, change happens. Thank you.
Thank you. About 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So I'm interested, Chris, in the cadences discussion and hysteresis, that kind of thing. Because it's a question really in terms of using David's diagram with 7 cadences and feedback loops and putting times on that as examples. This is a system which has got examples as well. How do we help people get the right on with the cadences generating feedback loops? But I mean, a good direction.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there would be examples we can look to community to understand. So the classic example is your stand-up meeting. It has a very short cadence. Yeah, it's a regular thing every day.
But also there's some teams where daily is not applicable.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's not their full-time job. You know, they're working together on something.
Yep.
Weekly would be fine because
Sure.
Maybe organise a conference, you don't want to have a daily stand-up.
Yep. So I think it's contextual though. You've got to observe, you've got to understand the system as it operates, and I guess through experience, see when the best thing is, or through conversation and understanding when best suits. So I think all of those cadences have that. There's some which have a longer cadence. You don't want to do an operations review every day. Yeah, you might want to do that quarterly, or sort of wider type thing.
Isn't that a lot about matching cadence towards useful information of stuff actually happening, matching towards flow?
Yep.
So the reason most stand-ups sort of sputter after a while is you keep repeating the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And then you need to do one of two things. Either sort of lengthen the cadence, meet more solos who have new information, or actually manage to shrink the work down. And that's sort of how you fit it. It's essentially match the cadence to change.
So yeah, so if there's nothing emerging, if there's no new information arriving, there's no point discussing the same thing again. Yeah, that's often what you see with a sprint retrospective cadence. Sometimes it becomes too early after a burst of retrospectives where a lot of the obvious problems that that identified can be fixed. They then start to die off because they are too early. Yeah, there's not new information around.
Or it's too late because you should have talked about it last week.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get everything you said. Makes perfect sense to me.
Thank you.
From my experience, though, the change often comes from one person in one part of the overall system. So it's quite hard, I've found, to start the conversation with the wider organisation. So, for example, I'm responsible for a part of the system. I don't have positional power in that system.
Yeah.
And all that sort of thing. How do we kind of get to that level where we're thinking of things holistically, but also then trying to improve things in the short term? So what I've actually done is I have made things worse downstream by optimising my part of the system. And for me, that has actually made people then start to have the conversation about it. So is that the right way to go about it? Rather than coming straight with the
Potentially. I think there's many ways in which you approach this, but that's one way. What you could do is you could agitate the system slightly and gain trust within the system in order to then get that responsibility or that kind of that belief that what you're doing is applicable in to a wider audience. Yeah. But I think if it stops there, if it goes, we'll just agitate right in the middle, we'll have this agile implementation, and we'll forget about operations, for example, then it's likely what the system will do is it'll gobble it back up. I've seen loads of times where you have agile teams without agile operations, agile kind of governance, and what happens is over time it just gets swallowed up because the system doesn't support, doesn't like that happening there. Any more? Right, thank you.